Thank you. Today we're going to talk about quantum bioenergetic medicine. Now, what on earth is that? Quantum is a bit of a buzz term these days, and it really talks about the idea that our medical system is based on something called Newtonian physics, and it's an area of science that our medical system is based on. Anything outside of that specific area is something that they call quantum or quantum mechanics. A lot of the Eastern medicine world, Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, doesn't fall under the medical system simply because they didn't understand how that science worked. Now, in recent years, people are becoming more open to Eastern medicine in combination with Western medicine in order to address more common issues that are happening to people. Bioenergetic medicine is essentially the combination of our biology and our energetic body put together. Now, I was someone who was suffering with chronic health issues, and the medical system unfortunately didn't have the tools to help me move through those conditions. Who am I? I started in the industry 12 years ago as a strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, and I was working primarily with athletes. Soon after that, I moved into something called neurosomatic therapy, which is a form of body work, fascial work, and I was working with chronic pain conditions, shoulder, knees, hips, feet, so on and so forth. And I had this keen curiosity to how the human system worked. How can we get people to perform better, feel better, so on and so forth? As I continued through my career, I became a board certified holistic health practitioner. So, upon saying that, I'm not a doctor. I'm a guy, I'm a coach. I help people through chronic health conditions. And if anything, I'm just a curious soul that wants to help people perform better and feel better. So, what is biohacking? Biohacking is definitely a buzzword. It's been around for a little while now. And by definition, essentially a biohack is anything that we use to hack our biology. Now, my perspective is anything that supports us in health and well being can technically be coined a biohack. I wear something like an Oura ring here on my finger. Many people wear something like Whoop bands that give metrics on what the body's doing. A lot of people wear smartwatches. These are called biometrics. These are different ways that we can assess our biology to see what's going on. Our last presentation talked about biofeedback in terms of the brain. So I want you guys to keep that in mind because we widely accept these forms of technologies as ways to gather information on what our bodies is doing. Why do we biohack? Improving athletic performance, losing weight, overcoming disease, improving quality of life, human longevity, fertility, overcoming trauma, mental health. Now, for me, it was physical, mental, and emotional pain. Now, that's the most important part, in my opinion, because any of those points that I just mentioned above generally create some level of pain for us at some level physical, mental, emotional. And that's why we want to figure out a way to overcome it, a way to work through it, a way to live free of it. That is my definition of a biohack. So, my story, as I said, I started in the fitness industry, and similar to CJ's story yesterday, he was overweight. I was on the opposite side. I was a skinny brown kid who grew up in a very white neighborhood, and I was bullied primarily because I was a brown kid with the last name Perusaud. And similar to his story as well, I found that anyone who was extremely fit, anyone who was strong, anyone that was in martial arts never got bullied and they were respected. So my younger years, I did Taekwondo all the way till high school. I left high school, went to university, and at that point, I was in school, I was playing rugby, I was playing football, I was on the track team, and I didn't have the time to commit to any of the organized sports as much as I wanted to. So between working and studying, I decided to start doing bodybuilding. I loved being in the gym, I loved the competitive nature, I loved the fight with the mind. How can you control the mind? How can you sharpen the mind in order to achieve better results? This is probably 10 years ago at this point, 8 to 10 years ago. And there was still this idea, at least in my perspective, that if you were physically fit, if you were strong, if you were athletic, and you had low body fat, that was the definition of health. I think that's still a thing that a lot of people think about. You know, if you have abs and you're strong, you must be healthy and there's nothing wrong with you. So that wasn't the case for me. I had terrible IBS. Felt like my insides were rotting. And, the medical system said all my blood work was fine. They looked at me, they're like, everything's fine. And, I had suicidal depression all at the same time. Earlier today we heard about the microbiome, how the microbiome ties in with the mind. And so the doctor said, you were just depressed. That's it. Here's a pill, and I told them that I didn't really like that idea and I wanted to figure out a way to help myself. So I knew about something called the gut brain axis. At the time, functional medicine was really talking about the gut brain axis, leaky gut, so on and so forth. I didn't have the money at the time to do a lot of stool sampling and testing, so I started kind of digging down rabbit holes of like, how does the gut connect to the brain? The microbiome being, this collection of bacteria in the gut. I started looking at my symptomology, started looking at how I was feeling. I was tracking how food made me feel. At this time, this is probably 6, 7 years ago, I found that fasting, not because I knew about the health benefits of fasting, but when I was fasting, I could actually think. I could actually stay awake. At the time, I was living downtown Toronto, and lunchtime I'd go have a poke bowl. For those who don't know what poke bowls are, they're basically sushi and rice. And raw fish and rice must be healthy for you, right? I would have this poke bowl, and within an hour, I'd be sleeping on the couch because my brain fog was so bad. So I would go all day, not eat till 5 p.m. because I knew once I ate at 5 p.m., I would be sleeping or I just couldn't think straight. So at that point, I started to think about, okay, what am I eating? I'm eating raw fish, I'm having sushi rice, there's sugar in sushi rice, rice is mainly carbohydrates. The food isn't inherently bad. So what is in the food, or what is the food doing to what's living in my gut that's creating issues? So at this time, I'm looking up, the microbiome, what can be in the microbiome, and I quickly came to learn that I had leaky gut. Now, how did I put one and two together? Well, we know that almost every condition known to man is tied back to leaky gut in one way or another. And if I was having poke bowls and having rice and then having brain fog and falling asleep afterwards, the carbohydrates had to be feeding something in my gut. Now, if it's feeding something in my gut and it's excreting toxins into my system and I couldn't handle those toxins, that led to brain fog and tiredness. So that kind of put me on this journey of trying to figure out what was going on with my body and how to put the pieces together. As mentioned, I didn't have the financial resources for functional medicine testing, and the medical system said that everything was fine. All my blood workers were fine, I was healthy. So at this time, I started figuring out, okay, how can I track what's going on with my biology to give me more information on what's going on? As mentioned, we all have these like different bio-tracking tools, Fitbits, smartwatches, and they give us metrics on our body. There's other techniques out there that we can use to gather information on biology, such as glucose monitoring. I mentioned functional medicine labs, live blood cell analysis. That is an old technology where we look at our blood under a microscope to see what's going on there. Brain tap HRV. Has anyone in the crowd heard of HRV, heart rate variability? Yeah, it's a nervous system metric, right? The higher the variability between your heartbeats, the healthier your nervous system is. And the lower your heart rate variability, the more likelihood that your nervous system is in a chronic stress state. The GDV camera, it's called gas discharge visualization, and it's basically a technique where you can assess the light coming out of your fingers. And this relates back to Chinese medicine, and we have this auric light body. I'm sure people in this room can appreciate when you see someone that has this glowing energy. It's not like you can actually see rainbows coming out of them, but we can see when they're bright, right? Their eyes are bright, they have this wonderful energy, you can almost feel it. Versus someone else who's sick, who's going through trauma. You could just give them one look and know that something is going on, and you ask them, are you okay? Well, that is our light body, and there's actually technology developed by the Russians, GDV camera, where we can assess this and see this. And the next technique is called EAV, electroacupuncture according to Vol, and it's a technique that we can use assessing galvanic skin response. So what we can do is assess what's going on with the body through meridians in the hands and feet. And that's what I'm going to talk about coming up. So these are some of the printouts of the techniques that I just mentioned. In the top right, we have brain tap HRV, looking at different brainwave states. Over here, we have the GDV camera. Bottom corner, live blood cell. And over here, we have EAV. So I went on this journey, essentially, to figure out what was going on with me, because all the other forms of assessment told me that I was fine. I didn't feel fine. I felt sick. I felt alone. I didn't know what the steps were. So I started putting all these data points together. Now, at the same time I was doing all of this, I was still working with clients. I was still running my own experiments, so to speak. I feel like all speakers here run their own experiments on themselves and their clients. How do we gather data? How do we put the pieces together on what works and what doesn't work? Soon after that, I started studying at a school called Quantum University. Quantum University is a school in Hawaii, and basically we take quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and we apply it to health. One of my professors, Joe Dispenza. Anyone in the room know Joe Dispenza? Yeah, right. So, it's alternative thinking. Alternative to some people, truth to others. To me, it's truth. It all depends on frame of reference and what we accept as truth. So one of the first models I learned is something called the downward causation model. And basically what it talks about is how we are these different bodies, right? We all see each other. We are a physical body. That's what we see. But there's other bodies layered on top of us or within us that we just can't see with our eyes, but we know that they're there. So we're going to start at the bottom, and notice the arrow going downwards. But we're going to start at the bottom because that's where a lot of people talk and focus. So our physical body, right? Our physical body, we can see it, we can touch it, we can feel it. And how do you work with the physical body? Simple things: diet and nutrition, exercise, breath work, yoga, massage, supplements. Like, those are all things that can support the physical body. I feel like a lot of this weekend so far, these past 2 days have been about the physical body and what we can do to support the physical body. The key here is it's at the bottom of the totem pole. Okay? If you're doing things to support the physical body and you're not getting the result that you want, then we need to start to look elsewhere. As mentioned, I was a bodybuilder, right? I was taking the supplements, I was working out, I was in the sauna, I was trying to sleep, I was doing the things, and my gut was still in pain. My mental health was still in a very terrible spot, and it wasn't moving the needle. So I started to look elsewhere. Above the vital body, or the physical body, is come the vital body. And the vital body is something that is more of an Eastern philosophy, something that acupuncturists use, traditional Chinese medicine, homeopathy. These are a few examples here. But essentially, we're working with this energetic body. Anyone in the room heard of chakras before? Yeah. Chakras, these different energy centers that we have. If anyone is a Joe Dispenza fan, then we know each of these energy centers connect to a nerve plexus. If anyone has really dove into his work, you'll know that those energy centers affect that nerve plexus to then create hormones for us. Hormones that help digest our food, hormones like reproductive hormones, hormones for the thyroid, okay? Above our vital and our emotional body is something called the mental body. Back to Joe Dispenza, the subconscious and the conscious mind, okay? Everyone heard of that? Yeah? All right. So within the mind, we have the conscious and the subconscious mind. The conscious is like 10 to 20%, depending on who you talk to. Subconscious, you're looking at 80 to 90%. Now, the subconscious mind is programmed by the time you're 6 to 10 years old, again, depending on research. So, if your subconscious mind is programmed by the time you're 10 years old, and now you're 50 years old, and you've never done any work on your childhood or your upbringing or your subconscious mind, then you're literally a 40, 50, 60-year-old playing this subconscious program. You're playing Windows 95. You're playing this old program that just runs your habits, the habits where you smoke or drink or yell at your partner or are reactive, whatever that it is. So, working with my depression, I had to dive into this. I had so much gut issues going on. Now, the solar plexus, our self worth chakra, is right here at your gut. And I didn't have the self worth that I should have had, primarily because of my upbringing. I am West Indian. My dad was physical, very common in that culture as a way of punishment and teaching. And it definitely drove me to be where I am today, so I'm grateful. But at the time, I was not. At the time, I was very angry. I was very resentful. And when I was 16, I put him through a wall. And that was the last time that, he tried to be physical with me. But even though it ended physically there, it didn't end mentally for me there. It didn't end mentally for me there until 23, 24, when I started doing the work I'm talking to you guys about right now. And what I had to come to terms with was that my self-worth issues, my self-confidence had nothing to do with my dad. Everything to do with how I perceived him and the stories that I created in my mind around what happened. And once I started diving into more of the mental emotional aspect of things is when I really started to heal. My vagus nerve started to calm down. My gut actually started to heal. My depression started to fade. Okay? And then at the very top, spiritual, prayer, meditation. CJ talked about it yesterday, practicing gratitude. Okay? Whether you believe in spirituality or you have a religion, it doesn't matter. It's all about this idea of faith and believing in this, law of the universe, a path that we're destined to follow, a soul contract that we're here to live through, and everything that happens to us is in an effort for our soul to learn the lessons that we need to learn. Another aspect of the spiritual piece is people who go through near-death experiences, cancer, car accidents. Things happen. Joe Dispenza calls it a quantum leap. Things happen, and it's like a switch goes off in the brain, and you have a completely different person in front of you. Anyone ever experience that or see that in friends, family? It happens, and that's what they call a quantum leap. That's where something happens on a spiritual level, and it works its way all the way down. So as a quantum bioenergetic medicine practitioner, we're mouthful here, we focus on a few different layers. This layer over here is primarily a naturopathic model that focuses on elimination, regeneration, oxidation, immunity, and assimilation. In the middle here, we have the framework of the downward causation model that I just spoke about. Beside that, we have all of our chakras. And above that, we have traditional Chinese medicine and the elements. So all I'm proposing here is that we have all these different aspects that create who we are. And if you want to biohack your body, your mind, your heart, your emotions, we need to take all of this into account. If we don't take it all into account, we are missing a huge piece of the puzzle. Okay? NMN might be great for the mitochondria, but if you are in a constant state of fight or flight because of subconscious programming from your upbringing, say something traumatic happened to every single person in this room. And the sooner we can acknowledge that trauma happens to us and not compare traumas with each other, the sooner we can step up and live from a place of love and vitality and be a shining light for everyone around us. Okay, Dr. Cass is the formulator of physic energetics, and I've learned everything I've learned about bioenergetic sciences from him. He's come all the way from LA. He's here in the front row, and I cannot take credit for these next few slides that I'm going to be talking about. I am merely a curious soul that used this. Yes, give him a round of applause. I'm merely a curious soul that's been able to put the pieces together, and this is his life's work. Got to give credit where credit is due. Our bodies are self-regulating, right? We've talked about autonomic function. Autonomic function of the body is it does things automatically, things that we do not need to think about. Our cells, they're always changing over. We're breathing. Well, most of us are breathing. Some of us hold our breath. That's a trauma pattern, okay? When we sleep, food moves through our body, right? We poop it out. These are all autonomic things that are happening without us thinking at all. Now, to think that we have to do things to make our body do things is backwards, in my opinion, right? To think that we need to, take this to digest our food or take this to make sure that our mitochondria functions. To me, I think it can be powerful and they're great tools, but our body has its own vitality. It has its own vital force. When someone is shining bright, when someone has like big glaring whites in their eyes and a big smile on their face, like you look at them and you're like, wow, they're very vital, right? What makes that so different? Why are they so vital in comparison to other people? Dissonance is movement away from the vital force. It is when we are moving away from the way that we should be living. In modern society, would you agree that we're not living the way humans are designed to live? Yeah, I think so. So with that, we have to find ways to reconnect with nature. We need to find ways to create resonance within our body. Our phones are creating disharmony all day, every day. Living in a condo, being away from the earth, surrounded by EMF. I don't say every, but a lot of our modern society is creating dissonance within our body. And that's just our environment. We haven't even talked about our mind. We haven't talked about what we inject into our bodies in the place of beauty. We haven't talked about what we ingest for fun on a Friday night or a Saturday night. My mission is how do we create resonance with society so that together we can create concordance and move people in the direction of vitality. So, the body is a flow system. I want us to think about how water flows from the mountains, down the mountain, to creeks, to streams, to rivers, eventually into the ocean. It's just how nature works. It's the movement of things. Our body is also similar. Do we have to think about sweating through our armpits? No, it just happens. Do we have to think about moving toxins from cells into the lymphatic system to go through the liver gallbladder to end up in our intestines to eventually leave or through the kidneys? Right? We don't have to think about that. It just happens. I learned this from Dr. Cass. All symptoms are healing mechanisms by the body. I'm going to repeat that. All symptoms are healing mechanisms by the body. Regardless of what your condition is, your body is trying to save you, right? Does anyone think your body is trying to kill you? Never, right? Isn't that why we're all here? We're trying to figure out how to improve our health. Now, instead of trying to get rid of a condition or a disease, what we need to figure out is why and how is the body compensating for what's going on in order to create, for me, for example, depression and IBS. Symptoms are a strategy, not a disease. So, this might be a little much for some of us, but we have our lymphatic system. Everybody knows what the lymphatic system is? Yeah? Okay. Anyone who doesn't know, those big nodules you hear in your neck when they swell up, that's our lymphatic system, right? Why are they swollen? Because we're sick. Our body's dumping things into our lymphatic system to get out of the body. There's also something called the extracellular matrix. The extracellular matrix is the space in between cells. Raise your hand if you've heard of fascia. Fascia, yeah? Fascia wraps itself around muscles, okay? We can stand because of fascia. It's a tensegrity system. In my books, and how I think you should think about it, they're not all the same, but fascia, lymph, the extracellular matrix, they all take care of the spaces in between. We hear about muscle, we hear about bones, right? We hear about organs, but what about all the spaces in between? Everything lies in the spaces in between. When you're reading a book, is it the words that you're reading that make the book, or what you pick up in between the words in the book? Right? So for me, focusing on the spaces in between is really what moved me forward in terms of my health and plenty of my clients. So the first step we need to focus on, if we're focusing on the extracellular matrix and the lymphatic system, is we have to drain the system. The system has to be able to drain, okay? Anyone in this room ever experienced swollen lymph nodes before? Big lymph nodes? Yeah. It means the system is not draining, okay? How many people in this room have suffered constipation in your life? Not fun. Yeah, the system is not draining. So in the world of biohacking, natural medicine, everyone talks about detoxes. I'm going to do liver detox, kidney detox. Do you think that you should be detoxing if you can't drain? The answer is no. So this is a chart that Dr. Cass created talking about something called biotoxicosis. And essentially, our body wants to live in a state of homeostasis. Homeostasis is normal. That's where the body wants to be. When the body cannot achieve homeostasis, it moves into these bioenergetic disturbances: xenobiotic, toxin accumulation, and compensation. Now, to give you an example, under xenobiotic accumulation, we have candida, fatty liver, constipation, and essentially, the system can only compensate for so long, ulcerative colitis. And then, if it progresses and progresses and progresses, the body goes into a rigid immune response, which is anything with itis, osis, or eventually cancer. The law of bioenergetic medicine, as above, so below. Rule number 1, the higher frequencies permeate the lower. Rule number 2, the lower energetic frequencies do not permeate the higher. And rule number 3, the lower energetic frequencies are a differentiation or an expansion of the higher. What does that all mean? Essentially, what's happening down here is a differentiation of what's happening up here. And that's just in the physical body. That's just talking about the mind and the body. We also have energetic bodies that we've talked about, okay? Anyone in this room know about something called transgenerational trauma? Yeah, we got a few hands, okay? There are certain things in humans that are programmed to be scared of or fearful of because of things that our ancestors learned, okay? That is transgenerational trauma. We have it from our own experiences in childhood. We have it from our own experiences from our parents, from our society, and then previous generations. I was sick because my body was a swamp, okay? If anyone has ever owned a fish tank and you clean the fish tank without cleaning the filter, what happens? It goes green again because you got to clean the filter. So I was sick because I wasn't draining, which is why when I had my poke bowl, I'd be tired and falling asleep. So what can be in the swamp? Heavy metals, chemical residues, right? Yesterday we heard a whole talk on heavy metals. Okay, chemical residues, plastic water bottles, right? Everything we put on our skin. The list goes on and on and on. I'm at the hotel, there's like perfume in the air. Oh, it's like gives you a headache sometimes. Stealth viruses, mycoplasmas, bacterial infections, fungal patterns, parasites. These are all things that collect in a swamp, right? Things grow in a swamp. If you want to get rid of the swamp, what do you got to do? Break the dam and let the water flow. What creates a swamp? I think each of these could be a 2-hour presentation on their own, but geopathic stress, we've talked about EMF and radiation, methylation pathways, have you heard about that? Lack of movement, right? 10,000 steps. Trauma, talked about that. Lack of sunlight, too much blue light, GMO, pesticide covered food, unstructured water, okay? I have 3 Kangans. I like structured water, I like hydrogen rich water. Lack of salt and minerals, hypothalamic dysregulation, left spin. Most clients are sick because they are stuck in left spin. Their mind, heart, and body are not in a place to accept nutrition or detoxify, and that plays through in the cells. In the technique that I use, EAV, people cannot detox. They cannot drain and they cannot heal if their system is in left spin. If you're one of those people that does everything right and don't see the results that you want, or moves really, really slow, and then you have a fun weekend and you go right back, that's left spin. We follow a process called healing for the pattern of life. And without getting too deep into this, quadrant 1 is restoring cellular communication pathways. What does this all mean? If you don't poop regularly, if you don't absorb your water, which means if you're peeing all day, if you drink and pee, it's left spin. If you don't poop, if you don't absorb your water, and you do not sleep, you do not have the capacity to heal. No matter what you do, it will not work if you don't take care of those things first. That's just quadrant 1. I could talk for 2 hours on that, but I'm not going to because my time's up. So, we follow a process we follow a process which is the right remedy at the right time, at the right level, and in the right sequence. There is an order of operations for taking care of the body and getting it to a place where it can heal. If you're just doing random things because so-and-so on Instagram said it or so-and-so on TikTok said it, you're going to set yourself up for putting xenobiotics and toxins deeper into the system. Okay, it's called progressive vicariation, and it is much, much harder to get these things out of the mesenchyme, out of the system when you drive it deeper. If we want to heal, which has been done for eons, we look to nature. We meditate in the mountains, we spend time in the oceans, we spend time in the sun. If we want to heal, we need medicine that reflects that. We need medicine that reflects nature and has the codes of nature within it. Dr. Cass's remedies follow that exact symmetry. It follows sacred geometry. It follows the math of nature, and within that math, our bodies are receptive to the healing capacities of the medicine. Most of what we take supplement-wise are synthetically derived and full of chemicals, and our body has no idea what to do with it, which is why we don't see the results that we're looking for, even though we tell ourselves we're taking the things, we're doing the things. So quantum bioenergetic medicine is the process that I use, plus all the lifestyle basics that we've heard about the last 2 days. And all it is a framework. It is a framework that invites you to employ into your own life, into your own healing journey, in order to figure out what's going on with anything you're looking to improve upon. Really quickly, I got 2 examples here. Dave was an amputee of 50 years, chronic pain, narcotics, failed surgeries. He's actually my father-in-law. And last fall, he came to me and my wife saying that he was ready to commit suicide because he was just in pain for too many years. That's a photo of him with my daughter. Some of you might have seen her around last week. And he's lost about 50 pounds. And these are some of the readings that we can see in his testing in 8 months, 9 months. This client here is Joe. He's 82. He first started seeing me when he was 78. and his daughter brought him to me because he was shuffling his feet, right? He was shuffling his feet, right and left brain weren't talking to each other. When elderly individuals start to shuffle their feet and they start to not be able to move, things start to go downhill pretty quickly. We found that he was in left spin. We found that his hypothalamus wasn't regulated, the top gland, that's our very first gland. And when that's dysregulated, everything else is dysregulated. 4 years later, he's off of all of his medication, no prostate issues, no GERD. He's walking, he's working out. Everyone at his church wants to know what he's doing. My name is Jason Perusaud. If you want to find out more about what I do or how to work with me, scan the QR code. It'll take you right to my website. Thank you.